The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board right now with your comments, questions, send us an email. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design. I've been designing beautiful gardens and landscapes for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me across Zoom today is Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matt.
Good evening, Joanne. Good evening, Gary. Welcome, everyone. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer, and owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media, email, or phone call.
That's right. And we want to thank everybody who's here today joining us on the live recording of Down the Garden Path. You can also, if you're new or if you didn't know, you can also check out past episodes of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app. So after we do this live tonight, later this week, we will release it as a podcast. And you can search your favorite podcast app for Down the Garden Path. Lots of content there, very seasonal, and we've talked about a lot of things over the years. So please, enjoy. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you will be notified of new content when we release a new show. And we like to thank everybody who tried to listen to us last week, right, Matt?
That's right.
We even tried to listen to ourselves and each other last week, and we just had a little bit of difficulty. So we had to kind of postpone the show. But we're back and we're excited. I'm sure we've got lots of questions from our listeners, and we are excited. About this new topic, even though it's kind of midway through the month, right? Our month of September topic.
That's right. I'm looking at the next part. It's that time again, a new month. Okay, well, it's that time again. It's a half of a new month.
Mid-month. It's
kind
mid-month
of an
now.
old month. Yeah. But yeah, so every new month we try to explore a new topic here on Down the Garden Path. And this month we're going to look at how to extend your gardening season from fall annuals to fall bulbs, lifting your summer bulbs and bringing in your tropical plants. And I'm sure there'll be a few lawn questions as well. We're going to discuss tips and tricks on getting the most out of your fall season. And to start, we're going to take a look at fall annuals. So, did you miss us over the last 2 weeks? Maybe you have a question about your fall garden and want to join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Write us here in Studio 101 at gmail.com. And you can reach us anytime. Joanne at down2earth.ca and Matthew at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's kind of a mid. So we're jamming a whole month worth of stuff into two shows.
Two shows.
So yeah, so they are going to be jam packed, everybody.
That's right. We're going to extend your season with two compact, really shows, small shows.
That's right. That is right. Howard, let's quickly I'm just curious, how are things at the garden center?
Yeah, you know what? Things are busy and picking up. There's lots of fall mums and bulbs, and there's still tropicals to be had for your indoors. Lots of trees and shrubs and flowering fall and summer plants that still are arriving to add some great color. And we'll talk about a few of those as well. But like we said, we're extending the season, right? There's still a lot to do this month and next. And despite a little bit of a cool season where we had, or we are now, sorry. Depending on where you are, you may have a lot more than we do left. But there's still
Hmm.
lots of fun and lots of things to be doing out there. So the garden center is hopping. It's still very busy. So yeah, it keeps us exciting and outside, which is
Oh,
great.
that's good. That is good. Okay.
Yeah. How about fall? How's fall treating your garden?
Pretty good. Everything is looking really, really good, actually. I've been pretty happy. Planted a few things. I bought some new things a couple weeks ago and got them in the ground. A couple evergreens and some of that. We talked about that on the show. The new little dwarf limetta hydrangea. So I did pick up the kind of related to the Annabelle, but much smaller. So I picked up. So I like to test out things that I think I could use, and so yeah, I mean at 2.5 feet, not 2.5 inches, 2.5 feet to have a hydrangea that's that compact. Almost can be like a ground cover in this one little area that I have. So I planted that. So yeah, everything is good except for my lawn. So I'm looking forward to the lawn questions because I have them too. Definitely, definitely. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, as we talk about fall, today is here in the northern hemisphere, at least,
Hmm.
technically the last day of summer.
I know.
So tomorrow, the first day of fall, we are right on point. So lots of month to still be had, lots of fun. Yeah, and actually, having just coming back before we jump in,
Oh yes,
we
we have some
have
questions.
we've got Shelly. Yeah, hello, Joanne and Matthew from Las Vegas, Nevada. No questions tonight. However, I enjoy listening to your show every week. Thanks for all of the advice, Shelly.
Oh,
Well,
thanks, Shelley.
thank
We
you
wish
very
we had
much.
your climate, Shelley. So it'd be nice and warm there.
Yeah, Shelly, what does fall look like in Las Vegas?
That's right. That's right. We're gonna have to have like that would be cool. That'd be a cool show to have like guest gardeners like kind of tell us what fall is like or what the seasons are like in the different parts of North America. That would be really fun.
That would be fun. And if you're listening, Shelly, or anybody else, and you want to
Yeah.
share that, yeah, let us know. What do you do for fall? What do you do to extend your season? Do you have new plants like our mums and asters and other things that we put out now? Do you guys have a new group of plants
Yeah, or do things
for
just
fall
keep
now?
going and going? That would be,
Exactly.
yeah, that would be really interesting.
That's right. Yeah. So write
Yeah.
us at instudio101 at gmail.com and let us know what you're doing for fall. That would be really cool
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Definitely. Um, Yeah. So, what do we want to talk about? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I guess, it's been, even though the weather's been kind of cool, um, I think, some people are like, because they spend so much money on their summer annuals, they're harder to part with, right? That
Yes.
whereas I think some people want to hang on to them to like the last second, and other people are so quick to like, soon as there's any sign of cool weather or fall, as soon as the fall plants arrive, they're like plucking those ones out and putting new stuff in.
That's right. A lot of people definitely do that. And it's a great way if your planters and your baskets or your urns are all looking tired, it's an easy, quick fix. But there are a lot of more, for example, hardier annuals that don't kind of die in the first frost, like
Mm.
our geraniums and different things as well. So,
Mm.
yeah, so depending on how cool it is, you make it a little bit longer out of some of them. And not all of them need to go right away. For example, like your pelargoniums, but your softer things like your begonias or your coleuses, things like that are going to
Mhm.
start to fade away. So Yeah, there's lots of, yep.
Yeah, the sweet potato vine, like I think of the sweet potato
Yeah,
vines and stuff like that. But I
she's
think it
tender.
really just depends on what how big the container was. Because I even today driving around my neighborhood, there I've got a neighbor with like wonderful pots, huge big pots of coleus. Like she's got three or four, and they still look amazing, you
Yeah,
know. And the colors are so like coleus colors are, you know, even though it's a summer annual, they're kind of fallish, right? Like the
very much so.
golden and the red and burgundies and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, I mean, that is a reason to do coleus is that you definitely can get a fall season out of them.
Yes, for sure. And depending on where you are too, you may or may not have some microclimates. So just because you see some of the other annuals that you may have in your garden that are summer, and you might see them flagging other places. I know that when we get a really good cold, the edges of those sweet potato vines, especially the
Mm,
chartreuse one, start to burn out a little bit. But
mm-hmm.
if you have a warmer spot, you may not find that. So, take a look at yours versus everybody else's, and don't just rip them out for the sake of ripping them out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially if they're going somewhere else, they may not be going in yours. I was in a park this afternoon, and you could see where the coleus was a little bit more exposed in one area and had taken some good cold night damage, some cold
Oh,
damage
okay.
from the
Mm-hmm.
low nights. But you could see where they were just a little bit more sunnier and a little bit more protected at a certain point in the day, and they were all up and looking beautiful
Mm,
and fun. So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, outside the GTA, I know there was a killing frost, or it was the
Mm.
earliest. So on Friday, which was, I believe, September 17th. Um, and apparently there hasn't been a frost this early since 1972. So I know my heart
Wow.
goes out to all the flower farmers and those in Ontario. Their crops. I know that my one of my favorites to follow is Melanie at Dahlia May Flower Farm. 3,000 acres of flowers gone overnight. It's just heartbreaking.
That's
So
just
yeah, and
devastating.
I've seen it. Country. I know we've had Janet from Country cut flowers. I think she just has an acre, but she lost hers as well. They just froze, like it was just a killing frost. So hearts go out to them. That's a lot of work of watering, seeding, and nurturing those plants since February, and getting them all in the ground and watering them and lovingly keeping them alive all through that heat wave, and to have one Friday night.
Yeah. Have one Friday night, take them all, and then watch the next week. It's going to be like 22, 23,
Yeah.
and the nights are going to be like 10 degrees again.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just heartbreaking.
So yeah, so I think some, were able to get some shade cloth or some like frost cloth or whatever on them, and on certain prized ones. I know Melanie had succession planting with some of her sunflowers. So some of the ones that were not as far along, the leaves looked like they did fine. So yeah, so definitely if you were sad that it attacked, the frost got your little planter, I know
Yeah.
that's sad, but just think about, how that feeling must feel like when it's like 3,000 acres. So yeah, shout out to all of them, and I know they're all working on other, revenue streams and things like that. So the lesson there is really support your local flower farmer, if at all possible. A farmer, regular farmer too, but definitely your flower farmers. So yeah.
I agree.
I
I
know. Now, where do you sit on the like what's your or let me ask you, what's your favorite fall annual?
My favorite fall annual. I like to see some of the things like the celotias come back out, the coxcombs. Um, I like them to come out. I do like the mums. It kind of signals that change of season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I like a little bit of everything. I
Yeah.
like a little bit of
Okay.
everything. I think for me, it's the excitement of refreshing. That next change is cool. It gets to harvest season, and it kind of brings in that feel with the kales, the flowering cabbages and
Yeah.
kales and things.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
What about you? Do you have a favorite?
I really don't. Like I think I love the challenge of not having to buy fall flowers, and purposefully picking my summer annuals to things that will last longer. And so
Yeah.
so I definitely the last couple years have done dipladenias or mandavillas. And I'm looking forward to talking about those next week, because probably after next week's show I'll probably have to start getting them ready to bring inside.
Hmm.
But I that's what I really strive for. And I mean, I love looking at purple fountain grass in other people's gardens and stuff like that. But I just, the thought of only having it for a month, I don't know. I just can't bring myself to do it. And it's not that I'm cheap, because boy, I'll spend a lot of money on plants, but I don't know. I don't know what it is about it.
About the purple fountain grass,
Yeah, or just about
or in
fall,
general?
like just, yeah, just having a fall, like, changing things up to be a fall planting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm looking forward to, and I love, I mean, I think a lot of it too is my garden is so hydrangea heavy, and they put on such a great show in the fall
Oh, but they
that
do.
that I think that helps me as well. Like, I think if my garden really wasn't showy, and my goal is always, even for myself as well as my clients, is to have that four-season garden. And
Yeah.
I feel like I've really worked at having things blooming. My Japanese anemones blooming, my grasses look good. Everything looks good. That I don't feel the need for adding annuals, and that's just me personally. It's definitely a personal thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, most certainly, most certainly. And if you, like you said, if you don't feel like adding lots of annuals, fall annuals, or you do realize that your garden is missing that hit of fall color, there's so many different grasses, and like you were saying, anemones, hydrangeas, rose of Sharon's, lots of different shrubs and perennials that can help add some fall color and interest, make that third and fourth season really shine in your garden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people have a lot of questions, especially about mums. Mums can be pretty tricky. I know you and I are always kind of, they come out so early, often when it's still a little too warm
They
for them,
do.
and we usually are kind of suggesting people wait a little bit, before you buy them, because they want it cool.
Yes.
People think they're very easy to come back, that they immediately, instead of keeping them in their pots, they put them in the garden and think, now that's good, every year I'm going to have mums. And that's not really the case, is it?
Yeah. Yes and no, for sure. Like you said, they're cool season plants, so which means basically the cooler it is, the longer the bloom will be. It won't go through that cycle. If you weren't aware, but yeah, mums. Everyone thinks that they're going to come back. People also ask in the garden center, where are the perennial mums as well? And there are a lot of the annual ones tend to be perennial cultivars, but that mum shape that we see, that nice, erect, tight, dense dome shape of the chrysanthemum, that's made in the greenhouse by pinching and pruning. That's not its natural shape. So even if you wanted a chrysanthemum, a perennial one, and you left it in the garden, and if you look 9 times out of 10, or quite often, not maybe not 9 times out of 10, but if they gather some leaves, you get some new growth out of it next year. They will winter over, but that's not at all what it's going to look like. It's going to be 3, maybe 4 feet tall, depending on the cultivar. A number of stems just kind of going upright. We're pruning and pinching these things from when they're like 6 inches tall. So what you're going to get if you perennialize it is not what you're going to see next summer or next fall. You'll get
Right.
the flowers, but the plant won't look the same.
Right.
Um, yeah. The other thing is, a lot of people think because they buy them so early that they're fall blooming. It's a long season. It's really that cold. They don't really rebloom easily, if at all. Sometimes they will, but more often than not, it's one good flush um, of some nice, good size flowers that last long when they're cool. And if you're lucky, you might get them another light flush underneath your first flush of buds, but by the time they grow up and mature, the season's basically over. We're seeing the threat of a heavy frost and or snow, and everything else is dying. So it is really a one-shot, beautiful looking plant. It is a perennial for a number of them, a wide range of colors, but it is just kind of a one-shot deal. Yeah, and you could have something like your anemones, a perennial anemone. Do you have September Charm? Is that the one that you have?
It's
Or
pink. Yeah.
okay,
It's either that or party dress. One is white, one is pink.
okay. September Charm is pink.
Okay,
The
that's
party
September charm.
dress is probably the white one. Yeah. So I mean, you could have something like September Charm that comes out, end of August, beginning of September, and has these beautiful, almost they almost remind me of like little moths, because the two petals are in front, the side ones in front of the like the top ones, a
Yeah.
number of times, but beautiful little yellow centers, the pink four petals, the little white edges, and you get some nice foliage, very long blooming, and I think that speaks fall. I mean, you can jump in there, but
Hmm.
but I think that's a nicer substitute for somewhere you would want to put a mum instead of a.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing is, do the bees really like care for the chrysanthemums or the mums? They love the anemone. Like they are rolling because it's an open flower.
Yeah,
And I think that's why, because the chrysanthemum is like getting the pollen out of that is not really possible. Uh, so I think that's a reason. And I mean the anemone, if that's something that you really want to have attracted to your garden, then the Japanese anemone, they love it. It's very open, like I said, and I've seen the bees like literally rolling around in there.
yeah, you're right. They are a great food source, late pollen and nectar resource for all those late season foraging bumblebees and honeybees and other native bees that we have that might be hanging around looking for a late snack. And yeah, the mums are pretty tight. And then being so bred and, pardon me, hybridized, yeah, we get those ups and downs, and some of them don't
Hmm.
really have as much resource as something like just a nice, fairly close to species cultivar,
Right.
for sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I have to say, like things like my persicaria that bloomed early in the spring. But so the flowering blooms are gone, but the foliage of it is still pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah, the Parasicaris have beautiful foliage, most
Yeah.
certainly.
So yeah. So I don't know.
You're like, you're talking, yeah,
I
doing
think there's
those.
a lot to do. I think there's a lot.
There's a lot of other options beyond
Yeah,
just
for
fall
sure, for
annuals,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from our listeners. Do they love their mums? Also kales, that is something that's a bit more intriguing. And I've even seen them in the winter, they with some snow on them. So the kales are really kind of cool and a bit more architectural.
Yes.
So they're an interesting add-on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful in mass plantings or a nice little border of them. You've got the different types, the capitata types, where they're very flat and almost cabbage looking, with the whites and the pinks and the purples in the center. And as it gets cooler, those colors really erupt. I can't Aciflaria. There's another cultivar, but there's some really cool feathery leaf types that are very, very dissected, that
Hmm.
really add to another texture and layer to the garden. And yeah, they'll take up to like -4, and they'll take a few inches of snow. So you're going to get color really extending your season with those cabbages. I've even seen too where around here in spots where they've been left in, and the leaves will actually flag and wilt down, and they'll almost invert themselves. So they look like wilted little cabbage trees, and then
Hmm.
the top, the center leaves are all exposed, and you get this little Christmas tree of like white and purple and
Okay.
pink that's left behind as the fall goes. Yeah. Susan's written in, and I think, Susan, we may have just answered your question, but Susan says, "Hello, Joanne and Matthew. Love your show from New York City. My question to you tonight: is it possible to keep mums blooming throughout the year? Thanks, Susan." No, and it's not, Susan. They are actually photosensitive, so as they notice that the days are growing shorter and the temperatures cool, that's when they begin their flower cycle. So if you could somehow trick them into having, shorter growing days, but they need that shorter growing day. So that's why you see them just in the fall
Hmm.
flowering, and you can't really get them at other times of year.
Right. And you mentioned how they really are a pretty high maintenance plant too, because you need to get that shape that we see at the growers that we're,
Right.
right now in that container, right? It's a lot of pruning, a lot of cutting back, a lot of trimming. Um,
Yeah, and they're started that way for like mid-June to
Hmm.
beginning of July out in the fields and the garden centers to get
Yeah.
that way. Yeah, so it can be quite a struggle. Yeah, but yeah, so Susan, she's definitely a fall flowering annual
Hmm.
or perennial.
Yeah. Now you mentioned celosia, which is really it's kind of a really kind of quirky and interesting flower. That's a summer annual, but does it will it tolerate some cooler temperatures?
Yeah, she will take it some cooler temperatures. She does like it more warm,
Okay.
but she will tolerate some cool temperatures. She'll survive some light frosts, but some good heavier setting frosts will start to really damage the foliage and the flowers, and eventually take them. Yeah, I love them because the celosia, you've got the plumed type, so they've got big fluffy heads. You get them in white and orange and yellow and red, so definitely fall colors. But you can also get them with green leaves and red or burgundy maroon leaves. So there's some variability. And then there's the coxcomb type, and it looks like the top of a rooster. You know that little, I do not know the term, but that little
Yeah, somebody
decorative
does.
piece of skin on its head, yeah, that kind of flops over. It looks like that. And they're really cool and funky looking. And you can get them in yellows and purples and reds and stuff like that. So yeah, they're very fascinating too. And they make a good cut flower.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
so you can cut them and bring them in for a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that is interesting. What else is popular at the garden center?
Fall bulbs for sure. But other annuals that we talked about chrysanthemums, we've talked about some celosia, purple fountain grass, as you said. Everyone loves the purple,
Mm,
quick growing fountain grass. It's definitely not hardy here. It's more of a zone like 8 and up.
okay.
But everyone loves that one. Other ones, we're going to see the return of some of the pansies being another cool season plant. So we'll
Mm.
see some,
Oh, that is true, eh? I haven't seen any of those yet.
yeah. So we'll see some of the pansies. They'll tend to be like yellows, purples, red, oranges,
Hmm.
a few blues, more of the fall or the autumn color tone. But they love the cool season. They can definitely take um, oh, pardon me, some cooler weather. They can also take usually close to zero or a little bit more, uh, and a little bit of snow as well, much like the kales. Often they'll self seed, and then they'll come back up first thing in the spring, and they'll be a little smaller. You
Okay.
usually will see them as like icicle pansies,
Oh, yep, yep.
and it's just kind of where they are in their seeding and their life
Hmm.
cycle. Yeah, but
Hmm.
they're still just pansies.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
curious if any of our listeners put and like so I've got a house plant in my annual containers. I've done shrubs before, I've done perennials before, but that's another great way is to make really interesting, long-lasting urns or big containers is to kind of mix, your summer flowering plants with some ones that'll bloom a little later and that, without having to really replant or rebuy anything, you could really fill your container with perennials that will get you kind of from May to the fall, can't you?
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And just as you were mentioning, houseplants off the top or something tropical. Crotons right now are
Mm.
fantastic out there. The reds, the yellows, and the greens. Another one for the summer that kind of gives you that nice foliage color, a little bit of height that I enjoy is the Cordylan series. Um, Cordylans, they have a thick, almost corn strap-like leaf.
Okay.
Um, you can get red, I think it's called a red sister, and it's almost like a maroon black. And then on the outer edges, you get a really bright, um, I guess it's bright because when the sun really goes through it, but a really nice, like magenta, deep magenta pink that really shines and acts as a nice contrast in the
So it kind of
background.
reminds you of the purple fountain grass a bit, but it's a bit more of a corn stalk, right? Like a bit more of a like almost like a bulrush kind of flower seed
Um,
head. Or no, am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, no, it won't get a seed head, but it's a very dense grouping of those corn-like leaves that kind of just grow straight up. So it's very upright and
Hmm.
almost like semi-shrubby like. And then
Really?
there's
And it's
one that, sorry.
okay. No, it's yeah. I'm not picturing it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then there's a neat one if you like a little bit more of a tropical feel. There's I don't know what the cultivar name of it is. It's totally slipping my mind, but it's got greens and pinks and some chartreuses in it. So it's very much like a spring summer kind of feel to it versus Red Sister, who is a little bit
Okay.
more pink and darker color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, you can add all sorts of beautiful perennials and tropicals that'll take you all the way through to the end. They change color, create different flowers at different times of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few questions
Oh, okay, perfect.
have popped in. Alice says, hi, question off topic a bit. What should I put down on my lawn now to prepare for fall and winter? I live in the GTA. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice. But yeah, so you can do a fall fertilizer if you already haven't. Usually, somewhere in the beginning of September, it is only the 21st. So you're, maybe a week or two off for fertilizing. But you can also now start because depending out here in the GTA, we're going to get a good week of weather this week. But if it doesn't hold, or the nights are going to continue to drop, you could also be doing some top dressing for your lawn and putting down some seed and getting that growing in for the fall, thicken it up, and then have that continue to grow for next year. Don't forget, you can still put your corn gluten down if you're not going to do seeding around the mid to end of October in the fall. And what that's going to do is help prevent any of crabgrass season, crabgrass seeds and other weed seeds from taking advantage in the spring as the
Mm.
grass wakes up slower than the weeds generally,
Yeah.
and that'll help protect it. So that'll be your first of your October, your March, and then again, depending on where you are, maybe your June as well of your
Mm-hmm.
corn gluten.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is there a sign, or is it like people's grass were hit hard, and I personally hate spending time on my grass. Rather put my attention on my garden.
Mm-hmm.
But when the grass looks like looks terrible, it takes away from the garden, right? So, what is the deciding factor that okay, I can fix this with some grass seed and some soil and some raking, or I need to strip and resod it? Like, what I mean? Is there a telltale sign that this is not a DIY project?
Yeah, usually if you get to the point where you've got a few empty patches, bare patches, maybe there were some weeds there, or you just kind of walked there, it was wet, and you kind of scraped or damaged the lawn, like a tire kind of rolled on it, and there's just
Okay.
little patches or manageable
Or big
patches, like
patches.
uh, what?
Or big patches.
Or big patches, yeah, or like something like a foot to 2 foot square kind of thing. Not too many of them, but one or two here or there that maybe used to be weeds, or just a really compact, well trafficked area. That's kind of DUI. But if you're at like, more than 50% weeds, and you've got bare patches, and you've got some bigger patches, like a foot by a foot, that's kind of just, you're almost at the point you could just like rototill it or have it resodded. And it's going to take a long time. Starting from seed again to get back to that nice sod green lawn can be up to a year and a half.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a lot. And
right.
I
And
just
that's
feel
a
like
lot when
it's
you get to that
so
tipping point.
compacted that so I really
Okay.
have more bare patches. Like the weeds don't bother me as much because I mean at least the weeds are green. So when you
Yeah.
cut the grass, like it's not so bad unless you're standing on top of it. But it's just the bare patches where I just see yellow and I just see soil and dried up, and it's so compacted.
Yeah.
That's where I'm just like, you know what? I just think throwing more seed and more soil at it, I just don't see how it can.
Can really do it. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's compacted, and the nutrients
mm,
might not be there, the
yeah,
profile for the seed to root.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you might just like rip up a section and start again. If you have tough soil, or you have tough soil, um, it is easier to seed. You'll get a better rooting and a better grip with the seed versus the sod, because the sod you've got, in those big fields where the soil is conditioned to do the grass seed, and it's perfectly
Hmm.
manicured. So it can take a lot for that sod to interface with our
Oh,
soil
okay.
because it's very different than the other soil. So
Mm-hmm.
if you do go sod, yeah, that's the time to till the soil, repair the profile, add some good organic matter in there to keep it breathing and alive, flatten her out, and then put on all that sod.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that line because we knew we'd have a few long questions because I know it's been a tough year for lawns.
It has. It has been absolutely brutal, and um, everyone's in the same boat this year. If it's not chinch bug, it's just the heat and the
Hmm.
drought that we've had. The lawns have taken a beating for sure.
And I heard that the chinch bug, like overwatering, kind of contributed to the whole chinch bug thing too. Is that true?
Usually, they like the hot and the dry.
Okay.
Um, so the overwatering, usually with your, yeah, I mean, if it killed the lawn and opened some spaces and
Yeah.
stuff, but usually the moisture, they don't really enjoy that moisture. They're drawn to that heat and the dry, and keeping it
Okay.
moist and long and cool can drive them away and help deter them a bit.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Excellent. Excellent. And we've got some more questions.
we do. They're actually still flowing in. So thank you, Alice,
Excellent.
for
Yeah.
your lawn question. We've got Brian's writing in, hi, a fall question, but not really about gardening. What are your favorite apple varieties now to eat? Thank you.
Mm.
Personally, I've always been a fan of red and yellow delicious. I like that they're sweet. Um, I like my tart apples and my different flavor profile apples more in my pies. But also, I mean, I'm probably just on the bandwagon with everyone. Brian is. I've really, in the last year or so, jumped into the Honey Crisps because
Yeah.
they're just so sweet. They make such an easy
Yeah.
snack. Galas are nice too, and that might
Hmm.
be the galas just because that's like one of the only things I can see in my immediate
Grocery
shopping
store.
or my
Yeah.
markets and grocery
Yeah.
stores. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say Honeycrisp as well. I'm not the apple connoisseur in the family. I've got some real picky apple people, but I would say Honeycrisp as
So
well.
you're picky apple people. What are they picky about? Like,
I
are
know
there
you're
a
going to ask
certain
me
one?
that, and I don't remember.
They're like, oh shoot, was it Granny
I
Smith
can
or
leave
was
and
it?
come back and ask him. He's in the other room, but yeah, no.
So yeah, Brian, what I noticed you. What is your favorite apple variety right now to eat? Are we on the same, or do you have something a little different? We'd love to know.
Yeah, we love to know.
Um, Dawn writes in, can I still trim or prune my trees, pines and firs more specifically? And no, Dawn, you don't want to be pruning. This is the time where they're gathering as much water as they can. They're preparing to fatten up and send all those resources into the roots. So the sap is very active right now, and you don't want to be cutting it open and causing those stress. The best time you want to do if you're going to really shape it is usually when it's nice and quiet, either in the winter, in the dead of winter, when the sap isn't flowing, or the odd one you can also shape in the summer. Again, the sap is up, but she's not really flowing. It's usually mid to late winter for a number of the different species, and then just regularly pruning your pines and your firs again, just as those candles erupt, all that new growth mid-May to mid-June, depending on where you are. It might be a little earlier, it might be a little later.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I confess I did install a garden today and the ewes were delivered and they were a little leggy. And so I did do some trimming. But we definitely don't. I think I just trimmed off this year's new growth. But definitely try not to do that. No trimming of evergreens. Just think that, really your trimming is really, as much as people think they're a way to control the growth, they really are, you're really encouraging growth, actually. So we don't want to be encouraging any growth right now.
Yeah, that's right. All those new tips are sending out a hormone to cause those other branches to stay tight. And when that primary signal from that meristem is gone, it wears off from those side nodes, and they can actually cause some new growth because they don't have that suppression anymore.
Mm,
So you can
yes.
get some new stuff.
So good question.
Yes, good question, Don. A couple more. George writes in, hello from Atlanta, Georgia. Um, Matt, the red thing on the top of the rooster's head is called the comb. Okay, so it is a comb.
Comb.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. See, someone was really paying attention.
Yes, George from Georgia.
Thank you,
Thank you very
George.
much. And that's exactly, yeah. There you go. The cock's comb, a
Yeah.
rooster's comb, and that's why it kind of looks like that. Perfect. Thank you very much, George. I honestly, I just, yeah, did not know the technical name for
I
that.
know you're like worried about like, it seems like that's what it would be, but yet it might have one of those, unusual names and then you look foolish. So it's good that you just can admit that you didn't know.
Yeah, no,
There are no roosters in your neighborhood in the apartment.
no. And if there were, I would be scared.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you very much, George. And plant names are cool that way, right? If you look at the botanical names, and even, I mean, in this case, the celosia, the common name, they kind of describe what the plants are and their colors and
Yeah.
different things like that. So cool.
Excellent.
Those are cool. Thank you, George. One more question. Oops, sorry, as I have to scroll up here.
Oh my goodness,
Irene.
it's 7:40. Irene. Hi, Irene. I know.
It's going fast. See, that's what happens when you're not here for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So Irene writes in for leaf raking. Should I use a softer metal blade tine rake or a harder plastic rake? Which is better? You know what? I honestly, I've used them both. I like more of a metallic rake
Mm.
face than the plastic. Find that the plastic is sometimes either just too soft or too cheap, and also it just comes down to my personal preference. I just don't like the feel of it. I don't know if it's really doing anything, and I think just
Mm.
the metal is kind of cutting in and grabbing like the leaf and the blade. Like if you
That's
imagine the
interesting.
metal scratching you, right, and then it's
Yeah.
doing that.
But you said
Um,
you like the metal.
I like the metal. Yeah, yeah, no,
Yes.
that's
Oh,
why I
okay.
like it. Because
Oh,
if that's
okay.
what it's doing
Okay.
to me, that's what it's going to do. It's going to get right in there and bite into that
Oh,
thatch
okay.
and that leaf. So
Okay.
that's why I like
Personal
it.
preference. Yeah, so I disagree. I really like the plastic one. I like
Yeah,
I because they come, I've got one of those really big, like green ones, like it's a
I
super big
hate those
one.
ones.
I know, but that, like, you really make traction. Those little wimpy, like little metal ones that are like a little triangle. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. And I also, they're, because they're very forgiving. I feel like, because with the big wide plastic green one, we can use it almost as
Makes a great scoop,
like,
like a
yeah,
big
like a
handle
scoop or like a
or a
hand, you
plate.
know what I mean? Like, you can kind of really use it to kind of put leaves in. So here in Ontario, I know in different places in North America you do different things with the leaves, but we put them in paper bags, which, and I know some of the states, they do that. They everybody rakes them to the curb and the machine comes around and picks them up, which totally makes sense to me. Much, much,
Georgia.
much better. But everybody does something different. So yeah, so it's funny, eh?
That
I've
is
never
funny.
liked those. I've never liked the metal. Like, even the sound of it, never.
The old fashioned, like, to me they're like very like 80s and 90s. This is a classic little triangle metal rake. I hate the sound of that grating on stuff.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
gets to me for
Yeah.
sure. And I do like the one thing about that big the rake that you like. I do like how wide that is. It's like
Mm-hmm.
2 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
Like that does grab a bunch.
Yeah.
My favorite rake probably right now, Irene, is the garant one, the red one with the metal tines. It's very squared. It's all the tines are a single blade, so none of the teeth kind of fall apart. You can get it in like a 16 and a 24-inch, I believe, or 20-inch, not 24, 16 and 20, I think. And it's just the tines are a little heavier duty, and you can use like rocks and mulch as well as your grass and thatch and stuff. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's my favorite if I never
Yeah.
write down. Yeah.
Good.
Cool. Wow, it's 15 minutes left. Thank
I
you,
know, I know. Well,
everyone.
I just want to go back to our Apple question. So I do want to give a shout out for a past guest on the show, and you should look for them if you've never heard of Not Far from the Tree.
Mm.
If you're familiar with them, in that a lot of people in the city, especially of Toronto, have apple trees, or there's apple trees in their neighborhood, but nobody wants the apples. So they come in and they will take the apples. They'll pick all of them, and then a percentage goes to the homeowner, a percentage goes to the person picking them, and then a percentage goes to the food banks. So it's called Not Far from the Tree. And I just noticed here that they've had a record, so 10,000 pounds. So they're saying that in celebration of the last day of summer before the autumn equinox, we like to congratulate all of you for helping us pick over 10,000 pounds of fruit. So this is all summer, this summer, and put it to good use. So not only apples, crab apples. I know they were just picking quince. So
Yep.
you name the fruits, and a lot of them are things that often were just left for the animals to take. And then they've put them to good use. So it's a great organization. So shout out, follow them. Not far from the tree.
Very cool. Yeah, great
No,
shout out.
like not a paid, like no skin in the game, but just it's
No.
a great organization, and I think it's great that they're putting that fruit to good use and those trees to good use.
Well,
Or-
that's it. There's
Yep.
so much food to waste, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
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 That's yeah. That's a whole other show.
So yeah. So one of these days I want to be part of that. So that's cool.
That's
So
very
yeah.
cool.
So to go back to annuals, everybody's if they're buying or planting the fall annuals, once you whether you put them in the garden or in the container, is it something I never thought of this, but is it something you fertilize?
No, you don't really need
Because
to.
the season's so short, right?
That's exactly it. You're going to spend those nutrients on something that it's just so short. They're
Mm,
going to bloom. They're going to do their thing, and by yeah, no, you don't really need to
okay.
fertilize them. Fertilizing your mums is not going to bring that second flush really.
Okay.
It's not going to speed anything along or magically
Yeah.
really
And you
do
do have
it.
to keep them watered. Like, there's no,
Yes.
buying them on a Thursday and then going to the cottage for, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, when you come back there will be dead mums. And there's no bringing it back. So that's something to really think about. Everybody sees drives at that has that house in the neighborhood with the dead mums in it, so that is a shame.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cooler in the fall, and we don't have to water really as much with fall rains or anything. But the wind is just as drying
Mm,
as the sun is, and that cool wind as it changes
mhm,
really dries out those plants. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah,
So some suggestions as we wrap up the show. So I kind of suggest that people go, whether you've got your moms or you haven't bought your moms or your fall annuals, but literally go to the street and take a picture of your front garden right now, it kind of mid-September, and you'll really get a better idea, I think, of what is interesting now,
yeah.
and I suggest to people to do this in January too, you know. So is there a spot where everything is green and you don't have something flowering right now, or are you pretty good and you've got a lot happening, because there's some really great shrubs that are pretty easy. I'm thinking like dwarf burning bush is a great plant that's going to about to look great. Of course, I'm going to be biased and say my hydrangeas. But now is a good time to go to the garden centers and buy those things that are looking good right now. You'll get the color and the tone of what you need in your garden. So I think getting that fresh perspective, getting it in a photo, like there's
Yes.
something about you with your eyes, I think you see what you want to see. But if you take the picture and then go in the house and look at it, you'll see what you're missing, right? What do you think?
No, I agree. That's a great tip. Yep, exactly. Even look back if you can't see it right now, because again, just like despite the trees for the forest kind of deal,
Hmm.
take a look at it when you go to take the look at January one. Look back at the fall one, and just you have a fresh eyes and a fresh
Yeah.
palette, and go, oh yeah, no, I could really use something there.
Hmm.
Oh, I see how that
Yeah,
could.
and even if it's not in the budget to add something now, or you don't have the time, then it's something that okay, so come spring, I want to pick up a dwarf
Right.
burning bush, or I want to pick up some of the, like a Woodgelia. I mean, Electric Love Woodgelia is a neat new
Mm,
little one, that's very cascadey, burgundy leaves. And instead of pink flowers like many of the wine series of Woodgelias, Electric Love actually has red flowers. So that's kind of an interesting one. I know Aditya, Yuki Cherry is one, and Nico Blush are two of my favorites, that have that, when everybody's going crazy in the spring for the cherry tree flowers, right?
yeah.
So these are a little shrub that have those beautiful pink flowers, kind of dainty pink flowers for I've heard most of the month of June. I
Yeah.
haven't bought them for my garden yet. They're on the list. But the leaves then have a really nice fall color. So I put them into a garden last week. I'm just doing gardens like crazy, and I was really impressed by what a beautiful foliage. In fact, I thought it was a Wigelia because I'm like, I got to the site after the plant delivery, which included some of the electric love, and I'm like, why do I have so many electric loves, right? But once I started separating the order, I'm like, oh, these are not Wigilias, but because the foliage had really turned a beautiful color. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you'd be able to have, pink flowers in the spring, a nicely shaped green dwarf bush in the summer, and then have a lovely fall color. So, for me to get not, we don't all have massive gardens. If you've got 5 or 6 different plants in your garden, then great, right? And so let's have one plant. Two of them. You need more than one usually. At minimum, to at least do 3 things, right? That's the
Yeah.
goal. So
And I'm excited that you're excited about Deutzia and
yes.
that those I love that group. I always have the foliage is so
Hmm.
smart looking, even
Yeah,
when it's
I've
out of bloom
never.
and it's green.
Yeah, it's so funny, eh?
Oh,
I think once something, I think for me to love stuff, Matt, I think everybody has to put either the term dwarf or little in front of it, because I don't have it. I mean, I have a lot of space compared to some people, but I'm filling it, right? So if
yeah,
something is going to get 6 feet tall, I don't have 6 feet wide. I don't have room anymore, so I can only do stuff and experiment with things that are going to stay small. So I think little quick fire, Bobo, which is little lamb, that kind of thing. I gets and this, Dutsia, say it's dwarf, and I'm like, okay, I can squeeze one in somewhere, So
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of my thing, and so yeah, and I think that's a great option too, because especially for maybe seniors that are getting a bit older and still love maintaining their garden but don't want the work. I mean, I know perennials are easier than annuals, but perennials are still work. You still have to divide them every few years. You certainly have to deadhead them. I certainly try not to get the ones that require staking, but some people love those. So, making the transition to some of the dwarf shrubs can be a way for you to really still enjoy your garden, but be lower maintenance, because the shrub just does it, right? There's not a lot of maintenance. There's no dividing, there's no trimming, right? I mean, but you
yeah,
get to, things like electric love and the Yuki cherry Dutsia, they just do their thing, and it stays 2.5 to 3 feet. So that's a perennial, really, a mature perennial. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
those are very good 2 cents. Yes.
Yes, yes. How are we doing with questions as we, oh my goodness, run out of time?
As we hit the end, Josh has written in. He says, "Hi, speaking of fruit, is it a good time to plant an apple tree here in the GTA? Thanks for the advice. P.S. You two are the Led Zeppelin of gardening."
Oh,
Oh,
oh my goodness.
thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Gosh, I don't
Oh,
know. That's like a big responsibility to live up to that. Okay.
we'll
um,
do our best.
so I think it would be okay to plant, Matt, but I don't know that you could find any, right? Like
that
that's the problem.
that was gonna be what I was
Yeah.
exactly gonna say. Is yeah, Josh, if you can find one, most certainly do it. If you like, I know I have I think 2 apples. I think I have Lady Pink and Granny Smith at my garden center.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say
And
in your on your apartment, your
yeah,
apartment.
in my apartment. However, there are some really cool, and I'm gonna forget the series because I think they just came out last year. But the fruit trees for narrow spaces, they're only 2 feet wide, and they do get to that 10 to 12 feet tall. So there's some columnar series. But anyways, I digress.
Mm.
But yeah, Josh, if you were to plant it now for sure, you'll get a little bit of root growth. The land is still warm despite the cool air, kind of like the water stays a little longer. We've got maybe, depending here on the GTA how the weather turns, a couple more weeks before the ground really turns. As long as she stays above like 9 to 10 degrees. Winter her, keep her evenly moist. Doesn't need to be sitting in water. But yeah, the big selection for you, Josh, is first thing in the spring. Check out your local garden center. They're going to start to show up like mid to end of April, and that's when the selection is going to be at max.
Yeah.
You get all the grafted, all the self pollinating, everything.
hmm And Susan, who's a fellow radio show
Mm,
on reality radio, Orchard People. So, Josh, you can check out orchardpeople.com. And I know she has some great mail order choices, mail order options. And wouldn't that be cool in the spring to have like a little fruit tree delivered? So,
yes.
yeah, so check out Susan's podcast, Susan Poisner with Orchard People. And she's got some great resources and some great, so you can, spend the fall kind of researching what you want and the size and all of that stuff. And she's got some great resources for doing that. And then you can have it delivered in the spring instead of driving and standing waiting for the garden centers. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and I think bare root. We've heard a lot of things about the benefits of planting something that is bare root. I know it seems shocking to buy, pretty much it looks like you're planting a stick,
yeah,
but apparently the success and the performance of them is incredible. So yeah, so that's just a little shout out for Susan.
that's right. And doesn't Susan's catalog have a few cultivars that are not, you can't really get into the garden center? Did she not say that? I thought her
I think
catalog had a
so.
few
Like I think
outside
I think
ones.
the garden centers, as you know, space, especially in the spring, space is limited. So
Oh,
most
yeah.
garden centers are just getting in, a few varieties or two varieties and a lot of them or whatever, right?
Those
So
classic that we
that's the
know are going to
advantage
sell.
of mail order is that you can really get something you more unique or more exactly what you're looking for, and they're just going to ship it to you kind of like a hockey stick, I think,
Yeah.
right? With some, you know what I mean? So there's no, so yeah, so that's something to check out. Gary, you can probably pop in and tell us the name of what I'm forgetting the name of Susan's show.
That would be the Urban Forestry Radio Show, and that's
Thank you,
heard
Gary.
at 1 p.m. on the last Tuesday of each month.
Okay. But if you go to her website, then same thing, you'll be able to access her past shows.
That's right.
So
That's correct.
that's excellent. Yeah. So that's good. So yeah, lots to talk about. I'm looking forward to next week. So I'm sure our listeners will have more lawn questions.
Mm-hmm.
I would love some advice, like make sure I'm doing all the right things, bringing my dipladenia in. We've got other people that have other house plants that they want to bring in the house, Boston ferns, foxtail ferns, so what was I going to say? Pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Pros and cons, right? In doing that. So we're going to talk a bit about that next week.
That's right. So we're also going to talk about digging up and lifting and storing all of those summer bulbs, your glads,
Hmm.
your dahlias, and how to take care of those as well for the winter when the time comes. So
Excellent.
preparing to move inside with our
Yeah,
precious
and
plants.
I hopefully people write in some questions on what kind of bulbs, callas, cannas, dahlias, that type of thing. So that I'm looking forward to that.
Me
Um,
too. I'd
mhm.
like to see how many people have amaryllis out in their yards for the
I
summer
kept
drawing
mine
them off.
inside, so I wasn't sure if that'd be part of the show about whether that'd be maybe an October show of when do we start bringing the ones that we put in the basement out.
We will talk about that as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we'd love to hear from you if you've got, we're hoping to talk about different environmental and climate topics for the month of October. November, we're looking for some gardening authors that we're really excited to interview and kind of, we figured, anybody who's got a gardener in their life or get asked for a gift for themselves for Christmas. So we wanted to kind of promote some gardeners that have some new books out. And but if there's a topic you want us to discuss, if there's a theme helping us, we got to start planning for next year. We just we'd love to have some feedback, wouldn't we, Matt?
We would love it. Exactly. Let us know what's getting you excited in your gardens or
Hmm.
your areas. We'd love to learn right along with you and talk about all the cool facets of gardening. So, yeah, definitely let us know. You can always write us here at InStudio101 at gmail.com. You can find me, Matthew, at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca. Joanne, we can find you or write you at.
Yes, Joanne at down2earth.ca with the number two in there. And my website, down2earth.ca, would also give you all my social media links. So Instagram and Facebook. And of course, our show, Down the Garden Path, you could follow. We'd love some new followers on our Instagram page. I know we've not been good at Facebook. We really want people to follow us there, but I guess we have to show up, don't we?
I just posted a really funny.
You did. I saw
comic
that.
thing.
I
was
know.
fun.
That was
I
very
laughed
funny. So
out
you guys
loud.
have to go to Facebook and see what Matt posted. It was pretty funny.
And it's very accurate.
It totally is. Me putting those I got 6 new plants in my garden. Oh my gosh. How did I do that? I have no idea.
Well, thank you, Shelley, Susan, Alice, Brian, Don, George, Irene, and Josh for sending in your questions tonight. Thank you, as always, everyone who's tuning in and downloading the podcast. We love to do it here with you. Thank you, Gary, for another wonderful Monday evening. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Monday live here on Reality Radio 101.com. So take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your host, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.